Hello and welcome. This is Amanda here. Obviously you know because you're on my channel. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to share with you some of the pastels that I'm using. I'm doing the 100-day project, and my 100 days are 100 days of working with pastels. Now I wanted to just go through some of the supplies that I'm working with, and it's not going to be a review of them, but I'm just going to show you some of the tools I'm working with that I have found after kind of reaching the halfway mark-ish. I've kind of got familiar with my supplies. I've got very messy hands, which I'm fine about now. And so just really share with you the pastels that I use. Now I'm using 5 different types of pastels, and you've probably seen images of some of them, but as I say, I'm just going through some of the things that I use to enable me to create some of the imagery. Now the other things that I'm also sharing each week is just a process video, speeded up, of me doing a pastel drawing. Now some of the drawings are using just one particular type of pastel, some just several different types of pastel, depending on how I feel and depending on what kind of effect I want. Okay, so let's get on. So some of the things obviously are going to be the different types of paper. So this particular paper in front of me is just a black cardstock paper. Now it's got a textured side and a smooth side. The paper that I've been using mostly, and it comes in a variety of different colours, and I've only got a small sample to show you here, is Carson paper. Carson is the maker of this paper, and they do several different types of shades. Now I really like this kind of paper, the pastel paper. It's got 2 sides. One's got a very fine grain, which is the smoother side that I use, and then you've got the coarser side, which more textured, and you have to apply more pastel to the paper, I find, to then, depending on the kind of technique that you want. And I've also just used white cardstock. I think I prefer, and I've used a white kind of paper. Here we go. So just this kind of paper, and there's a smoother type. So depending on what you have, because the pastel is very, depending on what kind of pastel you use, again, soft pastel or the hard pastels, you are going to find that, I find that my soft pastels are crumbling a lot easier, because I think it's probably because, I mean, I've had these pastels for quite a while, but that might not necessarily be anything. It could just be because they're soft pastels, they crumble. Anyway, so you've got the paper that you're going to use. I do recommend getting pastel paper or a paper with some tooth in there that is going to help the pastel to stay on, and then obviously you're going to fix it with a spray. But I'll show you in terms of, you know, the pastel is just, you're laying on colour onto the paper, and if you rub it, it moves. So it's not like paint where it's, you know, it gets there permanently or whatever. So I'll show you the 5 different pastels that I'm using. So I've got a set of Rembrandt. It didn't look like this when I first opened it, obviously, but after use they become a bit kind of, I don't know whether there is a way that you can clean them or whether you need to. I haven't bothered. I guess depending if you're using, you know, like all of them have got some sort of additional colour on it, because you know, when you're blending and stuff like that. And there's quite a few that's broken, and a couple went missing, and I'm not sure where they went to. But yeah, they break. So I've got the Rembrandt pastels. I've got some, so they're the soft. Let's go through the soft first. I've also got some Roni. They're the Roni tint. They're these. I've got about 8 of them, I think. And again, I'm not going to do a review on them. I'm just going to show you what I'm using. They're the Roni tints. I've got the Nouvelle Car Pastel, and these are hard pastels. I've got about 8 of those as well. And I've just used the colours that I have. I haven't gone out and brought additional. And then these were in a box. WH Smith's did a kind of like a sketching set, and they had some hard pastels in them. Okay. The other hard pastels I've got are the Royal Langenickel. Now, these are extra hard, and I only use these. I use these very rarely now, and again, depending on the type of effects you want. But I will do a review on these to show you how they go. But in this particular video, I will show you what they look like. And then finally, I've got these Conte pastels. These are hard pastels in pencil form. Okay. The other things that I'm using are brushes. So I use the brushes sometimes to move the pastel on the paper. I've got these are just old brushes. This one was one. It's again, when I'm doing detail. So this is for large surface areas. I don't now move the pastel on the paper very often. So I've got these 2 smaller brushes in which, when I'm going round some of the lines, I will use them. I've also got these, again, the WH Smiths came with some sketching pencils, and I use these when I'm finishing off some of the sketches. These, so as well as the Conte crayons, sorry, the Conte pastels, let me just leave them there. I've got the brush, so I've got several of these. These are hard pastels as well. Okay, the other things I use, as I said, are the brushes out, and then I've got, this is a Derwent Chinese white drawing pencil, so I use it sometimes depending to create highlights. And then I've got these sketching pencils, which are pastels. This is soft white. These are soft white pastels, and this is a sepia light, and that's hard. And the other things, oops, you have to be careful, especially with the pencils, because you don't want to break them. I've got this blending stub. I used to use it for when I was doing graphite, or when I was using charcoal. The other thing I use is these willow charcoals, made from willow, and they're assorted sticks, and I just use a small piece. I usually break off a small piece and use it when I'm doing some outlines. So this comes in a few sizes there, and they last forever. So I would just break off a small piece and then use it. I don't use it for anything other than kind of helping me to create additional lines that I might want. The other thing I have here, just move this here, is I always have a scrap of paper and a little container to collect the dust. So, and any bits of the pastels that kind of crumble. So as you can see here, especially in this particular one, the Rembrandt, these ones break, or they have broken it. I might have dropped it, I'm not sure. I might have dropped it on the floor. But what I'm finding is some of the ones that I'm using, they're kind of, I was going to say fracturing, but they're kind of, you know, becoming very brittle. And one of the things I thought is, rather than, what I've been doing is when I've finished, I usually just leave it. And I think maybe I need to just put the cover back on to stop them from, I don't know, excessively drying out. Anyway, so I find is when I'm using it and I'm creating an image, there's a lot of whatever doesn't remain on the paper, there's a lot of loose pastel, and I just dust it in here and then put it in this little container. Dust it out in the container. And then what you can do with this is create a kind of a paste. And if you've got an excessively smooth paper, if you put this, use this with gesso, and obviously you're not going to get, because it's just all the colours you've used, you're not going to get, it's just going to be a muddy kind of colour. It acts as a tooth to the paper, I found. So I've mixed this with gesso, or you can mix it with PVA glue and lay it down. So, or just use it with PVA. I'm going to experiment. We're going to experiment, but not necessarily today, or should we? I'm not sure. Yeah, this is just the experimental. But anyway, we'll see how we get on. The other thing I always have is a cloth. This has been quite well used. We're going to wash it soon. But what I do is when I'm using the pastel, I just use it to rub it off on my hands, because I really hate that kind of dusty feeling. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I really want to play now. Okay, let's go through the pastels, and I'll do this bit last because it's just like, oh gosh, I forgot all about that. Okay, so I'm going to use this paper so that you can see, and all I'm going to do is just layer some of the pastels on each of them, on the smooth and the rougher side, and I'll show you as well on a sample of this. This is the Carson paper, pastel paper, and it does come in a variety of other colours, and it's definitely worthwhile getting, especially if you're doing, I do a lot of faces, generally I do faces on my pastel papers, and so you can get some nice effects when you're using a coloured paper as opposed to one that was just white. And I also find it with the black card. So we're going to do the coarse side first, and I'll just go through some of the pastels so that you can see. Okay, so this is the Rembrandt soft pastel on there. I'll just use 2 colours, and of course you can blend with your fingers. So this is on the coarse side, so you will always see, you know, the texture on there, or as I say, I would use the brush. Let's come in a bit closer. Oops, that's going out. So the other thing that I would use is the brush, but it lifts up the pastel, yeah? And there's not much point in that, unless you really want just to, you know, you just really want to get some colour down. But but I find it a waste. I guess it depends what you're doing. So this is with me just smoothing with my fingers, and that's me smoothing with the brush. But I do that less and less now, because you want a good amount of pastel on the paper, you know, again, for the image that you're doing. And sometimes what I would do when I've lifted up some of the pastel is I wouldn't even dust it off. I would just almost like compress it back into the paper, again dependent on the effect you wanted. But because it's textured paper, you're always going to get the lines and you're never going to fill it up. So you consider that when you are creating a particular image. Okay, so the next one we'll do, I'm just taking a couple of the, I don't know why I've taken those colours. This is the Conte. Now it's a hard pastel. Now I don't use this one to get like large areas of colour. I would use it, say if I was creating a face and I wanted to highlight certain areas, or I would use the side and maybe go round an area. But again, you need to keep these nicely sharpened. So again, you can blend it with your fingers. But you might not necessarily blend it that much, or lift it up with the brush. Now the better they are in terms of the pastels, the more colour you would have remaining after lifting it up with the brush. And then, as I say, I often just do that. So it depends on what colour I'm using as well, because I don't want, you might not necessarily want to have just loads of colour blended together. So that's the Conte. And let's go for the, I'm going to go for the one that I dislike the most, least at the last. So now I'm going to use, alright, I don't really dislike them, you just have to know, you have to decide what it is you're going to use, and I'll just use these two. So this is the Nouvelle Car Pastel, and this is a hard pastel. Again, it's not as hard, whilst it's a hard pastel, it's not as hard as the Conte. Maybe I should have gone down in hardness or softness, but it doesn't matter. Okay. But these are quite clean in terms of its application. Sounds like a review now. And I find that they don't blend as much, so I would normally use this with others. Again, you can lift it up with the brush, and you get quite a, I guess this is turning into a review, isn't it? You get quite a good amount left. Again, when my fingers get really dusty, that's where the cloth comes out, and I just rub it off. Okay, I've got the Roni. These are soft pastels, and I just keep my Roni and my Nouvelle Car in the same box. Okay, so the Roni are tints, and they are really smooth and really soft. extremely soft pastels, and they are extremely, you know, they break quite easily. So again, you know, they blend fairly well. And using the brush, they lift up, and then, you know, as I say, I would often go around and just do that on the particular image, because that also gives me additional texture and depth. So you've got the Rembrandt, you've got the Conte hard, Rembrandt soft, Conte hard, Nouvelle Car hard, Roni. Now the last one is the oh, before I do this, let me show you the soft, the white sketching soft and the sepia, and this is the, so this is the Derwent drawing, so I would just use that again for highlights. This is the white sketching soft, again this is hard pastel, and even though it says soft, and this is the, probably won't see that, oh yeah you can, maybe, yeah, so I just do that, use that when I'm trying to create additional lines, and they do blend as well, and the only one that will come up is the sepia light. Okay, now these are the Royal Langnickel. The Royal Langnickel. So I've had these for a very long time. These are hard pastels. When I brought them, I had just brought them. I didn't, you know, I didn't know anything about pastels, and I think they weren't that expensive. They weren't that pricey. Anyway, so these are extremely hard. Now the thing with these is, these I would just use either on their own, because when you use them they compress the paper, so you don't really get much else on top, and you have to press quite hard. The only one that I find, I mean these, so I'm pressing fairly hard, but it goes on quite smoothly, so you'll always get a smooth finish. You will never be able to lift them up, but again it's a hard, you know, really hard pastels, and they don't really play well. I mean, they only play well together and not with any other pastels. And as I say, you either have to use them, if you're going to use any other pastel and then use these, you would use the other pastel first and then use these last. The only one that I've found that will go over any other pastel is the black. But again, what it will do is it will compress the paper, and then there's no other room for the pastel to sit. So you can't, as I say, once you've got that down, you can't really get any other pastel on top, so you have to do, and then the only one I've found that you can maybe draw on top using it is the black, but all other colours you're not going to get a really good, you're not going to get a really nice effect. So with the Langnickel I find you have to use them on their own. And again, you're pressing quite hard and nothing else will really sit on the paper. So they're the 5 on the rough side. So I've still got some loose pastel here. So what I then do is I just dust it off onto here. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is the smooth side and see how they all work, and we'll start first in the same kind of order, well, not in the same order but in reverse order, with the Lang nickel. And do you know what, even though I prefer using like several pastels together, I do like some of the effects that you get with this. I was doing that all off on camera. Yeah? So I do like the smoothness you get with the paper. I guess what I've yet to do is work out how to incorporate it with the style that I use. But again, I do like the smoothness that you get. Okie dokie. So that's the Royal Lang nickel. The sepia and the white would work in the same way. So the next one I'm going to show you is the Roni, the soft tints. Again, they go on really smoothly. Now it looks like this paper, whilst it's got a slight texture on it, but yeah, let me try once it's I was going to try the Roni with the Lang nickel. Okay, and now I'm going to try the this is the Nouvelle car. Yeah, I find when I blend too much with my thumb, it just kind of almost like gets congested. So as I say, sometimes I use a brush, or you know, you can use the colour itself and you know, blend some of the colours together, move some of the colours around. So that's these bits are where I've smoothed it with my finger, and then that's the brush. Okay, yeah, my hand's getting really yucky-fied. Because I've been doing a lot of pastel work today. So this is the Conte. Again, the Conte is nice on smooth paper, but because it's a hard pastel, you get a lot of the dust lifting up. I will be doing some videos where I will just do individual pastels, do a review of the individual pastels and create an image with them for you. This might be affecting people's, you know, that kind of scraping your, oh, I like these three colours together. So, I really do like the way the content goes on smooth paper. And it's quite good pigment. I'm not going to blend that in because I'm going to use it for the other experiment. I put some cream on my hands. My hands just feel so dry. I hate it. I hate that feeling. That's one of the reasons why I hadn't been using pastels, and I know now, and I know you're thinking as I'm rubbing the cream into my hands, then you're not going to be able to blend it with your fingers because of the oils. But what I'll do is just use a bit of tissue on the fingers that I normally blend with, and we'll see if we have any problems. Okay, the last one I'm going to use is the Rembrandt. And yeah, Rembrandt on, this is what I would normally use, the Rembrandt on smooth paper. And let's have a look. No problems with oils. Just blend like so. Colours have come out really nice. And so that's, in terms of, you know, creating on coloured paper, you get some really nice effects. Yeah, so I would take this, so if it was a drawing, and dust it off, and let's put it in here. So rather than throw it away, everything gets used, and that's what you're going to find on this channel. I will always find ways of recycling, reusing in some way, you know, if you can. Using stuff for texture. Some of the, okay, but it's not that video, when I sharpen pencils, if you want to create texture, this mixed with the PVA glue and applied to surfaces makes really lovely texture, again depending on what you're doing. Okay, so this is a cast on paper, and I'm just going to do one of each. I'm not going to do lots. So this is, again, we'll go in the order that we'd started. So we've got the Rembrandt. Ooh, look at that. I love this colour. It's one of my favourite colours. So we're doing this on the textured side. Okay, so we've got the Rembrandt. We've got the Conte. Ooh, look at that. Again, it's the bright colour, and again, the bright colours on the paper. This is the soft pastel, the Roni. And I'm considering taking off the paper. I don't know whether it will all start crumbling on me or not. This is the Nouvelle Car. And Royal Langnickel. It's almost like a coloured pencil. As I say, it's a very hard pastel. Yeah, it's very hard. Okay, so they are the pastels. And as I say, I do use them together. And as you can see here, me just blending them. Ooh, I like the green and the blue together. Doesn't that look cool? So, just draw you in. So with the, because it's textured paper, you're still gonna get this effect. You know, you're gonna have to really try and blend it to get rid of some of the texture, but then you're using it because it's got texture, not because you don't want texture. So that might be part of the effect you're going for, but I would normally use the smooth side. Yeah, so I'm just going to flip it over. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, maybe slightly different colours. So the Rembrandt, use a bigger piece. This is the Roni tint. The new Vel Car. I'm going to use that colour again. Love it. This is a Conte. Again, because you're able to press slightly harder. I might be using you guys a bit more. I need to sharpen you a bit better. And this is the Royal Langnickel. And yeah, blending with these on the smooth side. You get a lot better saturation. Saturation, is that the right word? You know, please forgive me if I'm not using the right words. Again, pastels was never my first love. I used to hate them because of this mess. But I enjoy using them now. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do, so that's the Carson paper. As I say, I do recommend you going out and investing in some. If you're doing it just to play, then you might be able to, you know, use some of the supplies you've got, depending on what you've got. I think it's worthwhile seeing what it's like using the tools as they're meant to be. You know, get some, start out with some pastel paper and see how you get on. You might end up, you know, experimenting and finding that you prefer a different kind of paper, but at least you know. And that's what I would also say with using your resources and learning how to use them. Okay, so we are going to get some glue and get some gesso. So I need to come back out a bit more. And let me get my palette knife.